In just a matter of seconds, a bluefin tuna can be sold for over $3 million, more expensive than a Bugatti Chiron. But that is only the beginning of an industry worth more than $100 billion, where billions of pieces of sushi are produced, transported, and consumed every day at astonishing speed. It all begins with modern offshore fishing fleets, where massive tuna are caught and handled with advanced techniques the moment they are brought aboard, preserving their purity at the highest level. From here, they enter intense auctions at Japan's largest seafood market before being delivered directly into the hands of master shokunin, who transform them into sushi, a refined combination of vinegared rice and raw seafood, entirely distinct from sashimi or Korean kimbap. Today, let's join Agriculture Insight in uncovering the entire massive system behind every piece of sushi. From the depths of the ocean and billion-dollar auctions to the elite craftsmanship that has turned sushi into the most popular foreign cuisine in the United States. Let's begin. First, make sure you clearly distinguish sushi from the many culinary icons that are often confused around the world. Although they are frequently served together, sushi is entirely different from sashimi, slices of fresh seafood served without rice. It is also unrelated to Korean kimbap, where the rice is seasoned with sesame oil and combined with cooked ingredients such as sausage, stir-fried beef, or pickled radish. Amid the wide variety of rolled dishes, the essence of sushi lies in the combination of fresh seafood and the subtle acidity of vinegared rice, the key element that balances the richness of the fish while stimulating the palate, allowing diners to enjoy multiple pieces without feeling overwhelmed. Originating from the ancient method of preserving fish with fermented rice, sushi has evolved into a massive industrial force in Japan. The 4 largest conveyor belt sushi chains alone serve around 5 billion plates per year, generating approximately $15 billion in revenue, far surpassing the scale of the domestic ramen market. Beyond that, in New York, about 60% of meals at high-end dining destinations today are omakase, where diners entrust the chef entirely to deliver sushi at the perfect timing, temperature, and sequence. A single meal can last up to 2 hours, with prices ranging from $300 to $900 per person, reflecting the pinnacle of sushi craftsmanship. At Funka Bay in northern Japan, the fierce waves each December signal the start of the hunt for the most expensive protein on the planet. This is when sea temperatures drop sharply, forcing bluefin tuna to store thick layers of fat to survive, creating a rich, buttery texture that reaches peak economic value. To access these blocks of red gold, Japanese fishermen operate an extremely sophisticated fishing system. First is the single-line handline method, a direct one-on-one confrontation between a person and the fish, the most physically demanding approach, but one that preserves the skin and flesh texture in perfect condition. However, to optimize productivity on an industrial scale, they deploy long-line fishing systems that stretch across the ocean, with each set carrying between 1,000 and 3,000 hooks extending for tens of kilometers beneath the surface. This method is preferred because each circular hook is designed to automatically lock into the corner of the fish's mouth, keeping the ocean giant secure without tearing the valuable flesh inside. Every fish, once brought to the surface, must be gutted, have its neural signals eliminated, and then be immediately chilled with ice. Otherwise, extreme stress will cause lactic acid to build up, burning the flesh from within and turning the ruby-red meat into a mushy, sour mass. A delay of just a few minutes can cause a tuna weighing over 200 kilograms to instantly become worthless, fit only for animal feed. From offshore fishing fleets, each tuna is hoisted by container cranes directly into the world's largest fish market, Toyosu Market. a hub that gathers hundreds of dealers and circulates about $12.5 million worth of seafood every day. Here, the early morning atmosphere becomes the focal point, with thousands of tuna arriving from around the world, from locally caught fish to massive specimens transported all the way from Ireland. The entire auction floor is painted a distinctive green, a clever visual trick that makes the ruby red color of tuna meat appear more vivid and striking under the lights. Before the auction bell rings to signal the start of the hunt, professional buyers carry out inspections using a tool called a sashikage. They extract a small sample from the tail, examine it under a flashlight to check the color, and may even touch or taste it to evaluate fat content and elasticity. Once the auction officially begins, the atmosphere becomes intensely tense with the rapid-fire chants of the auctioneer. All transactions take place at lightning speed using the Tayari hand sign system, a form of body language that allows them to count up to 100 using only finger movements. A single mistaken gesture or misread signal can cost a buyer dearly, either by paying for an unwanted lot or losing the chance to secure a prized catch to a competitor. Each buyer has only about 10 to 15 seconds to make a final decision, and once a fish is sold, absolutely no one is allowed to touch it. The pinnacle of this luxury was once again set at the first auction of the year. A 243-kilogram bluefin tuna, caught in the renowned waters of Oma, was sold for an all-time record price of $3.25 million. The buyer was none other than Kiyoshi Kimura, the Tuna King and owner of the Sushi Zanmai chain. From here, the finest bluefin tuna are transported directly to high-end restaurants in ice-packed conditions. But before the massive fish is placed on the cutting table, one of the most important preparatory rituals begins. Knife sharpening is not merely maintenance. It is an art that demands absolute patience and precision. Master shokunin use a range of whetstones with varying grits, from coarse to ultrafine, even reaching 10,000 grit or higher. This process can take hours, until the 1.5-meter-long Maguro Bocho blade achieves the sharpness of a samurai sword, capable of slicing a sheet of paper suspended in mid-air without applying any pressure. With a blade sharpened to near-liquid precision, the butchering ritual takes place on a damp surface to eliminate friction, allowing the craftsman to maneuver a fish weighing hundreds of kilograms with remarkable smoothness. The process does not begin with cutting the flesh, but with controlling what can destroy it the fastest: enzymes from the internal organs. Therefore, the first step is always to open the gills and abdominal cavity, completely removing the internal organs to halt decomposition immediately. Once the body is stabilized, the fins and head are processed to eliminate any obstacles, clearing the path for the blade to move precisely along the spine. Only then does the dorsal cut begin, requiring a perfectly straight and continuous stroke. Even the slightest deviation can damage the muscle fibers, instantly wiping out thousands of dollars in value from the fish. Finally, the cuts of meat are separated from the bones, and the thick skin is removed along the grain to preserve the integrity of the precious fat layers. The entire portion is then tightly wrapped in specialized cloth and rapidly chilled before entering the aging stage, where endogenous enzymes transform proteins, eliminate sourness, and activate umami, the key element that creates deep sweetness and a velvety texture. From these perfectly matured cuts, the journey of transforming tuna into melt-in-your-mouth slices enters its most refined stage upon arriving at the restaurant. Here, the art of saku begins as shokunin break down the massive blocks into precise rectangular portions, ensuring not a single millimeter of meat is wasted before the decisive cuts are made. A fundamental rule every itamae must remember is to cut against the grain to break down muscle fibers. This is the key that allows the fish to instantly release its flavor and melt upon contact with the warmth of the mouth. Unlike sashimi, which is often cut thicker to emphasize a firm, chewy texture, tuna prepared for sushi is sliced thinner and longer to create a soft drape that gently embraces the rice. In fact, if you order a typical tuna sushi plate, most of what you are eating is chutoro, the belly cut that makes up about 20% of the fish's body, offering an almost perfect balance between the richness of fat and the sweetness of lean meat. The most prized item on the menu is otoro, the lower belly cut that accounts for less than 5% of the fish, with dense marbling where the highest energy is stored. Interestingly, otoro was once considered cat food because it was too fatty and spoiled quickly, but it has now become a symbol of luxury, with prices reaching up to $80 for a single piece of nigiri. In contrast, akami, the deep red meat along the spine, makes up about 60% of the entire fish and carries the purest flavor along with the highest iron content. However, precisely because it is lean, akami is also the most difficult part to handle. Even the slightest mistake can immediately reveal a fishy taste and dryness. For this reason, true connoisseurs judge a chef's skill not by otoro, but by how well they prepare akami to achieve a smooth texture and a clean, pure umami sweetness. But would you believe that those million-dollar cuts of tuna are merely the foundation? The true soul of sushi lies in the shari, sushi rice, the element that determines up to 80% of the quality of a perfect piece. In reality, premium seafood can be bought with money, but the technique of preparing the rice is the ultimate standard that separates a master from the rest. It all begins with selecting short-grain rice with a high amylopectin content, the type of starch that provides stickiness and cohesion, while still allowing each grain to remain distinct in the mouth. Once cooked, the rice is not left to cool naturally, but is immediately transferred into a hinoki wooden tub, a material capable of controlled moisture absorption, removing excess steam without drying out the core of each grain. At this stage, the mixing of red vinegar akazu takes place while the rice is still warm. Unlike regular white vinegar, akazu has a deeper acidity and a rich umami finish, key elements that not only balance the fattiness of the fish, but also define the entire flavor foundation of the sushi. But most importantly, the secret of great sushi lies in temperature. A professional itamae always keeps the rice at around 37 degrees Celsius, close to human body temperature, allowing the fish's fat to soften instantly upon contact without compromising the structure of the rice. In other words, sushi is not a random combination of rice and fish. It is a system of precise control over temperature, moisture, and structure. That's why you should never dip the rice side into soy sauce. A proper piece of sushi has already been perfectly balanced in every aspect, so the only thing you need to do is place the whole piece in your mouth and experience the complete harmony of temperature, acidity, and richness. However, sushi has not always been globally popular in its original form. When it entered the American market in the 1960s, it faced a very practical barrier. Most Americans were not ready to eat raw fish, and were even less comfortable with the black seaweed wrapped on the outside. To adapt, the California roll was created in Los Angeles as a simple yet highly effective solution. By turning the rice to the outside to hide the seaweed and replacing raw fish with avocado and imitation crab, pioneering chefs opened the door for sushi to enter the American mainstream. As a result, from a once unfamiliar dish, sushi quickly grew into a multi-billion-dollar industry with more than 16,000 restaurants across the United States, so much so that in 2007, Japan officially recognized the California roll as a legitimate form of sushi, completely removing the stigma of it being a fusion dish. Ultimately, whether you are sitting at a casual conveyor belt restaurant or spending hundreds of dollars on an omakase experience in Manhattan, the essence of sushi remains unchanged. It is the absolute precision of ingredients, structure, and timing, all working together to transform fresh seafood into a refined culinary experience. Used as a prized medicinal herb as early as the 8th century, wasabi did not truly become the soul of sushi until the Edo period, when its remarkable ability to preserve raw fish was discovered. In an era long before refrigeration, wasabi's powerful antibacterial properties helped prevent food poisoning and eliminate the fishy odor of raw seafood, laying the foundation for Japan's culture of fresh, raw cuisine. What makes wasabi particularly fascinating is that its heat is completely different from that of chili peppers. While chili peppers create a lingering burn on the tongue, wasabi produces a sharp, pungent sensation that rushes straight up the nose and fades away within seconds. This distinctive kick often leads people to believe that wasabi is made from some kind of spicy leafy vegetable. In fact, it belongs to the Brassicaceae family, the same family as cabbage, mustard, and horseradish. Plants in this family produce unique pungent compounds that give wasabi its unmistakable flavor. Bold yet clean, intense yet fleeting, a taste that no other condiment can truly replicate. Yet there is a striking reality. The entire world produces only about 5,000 tons of real wasabi each year. A drop in the ocean compared with the more than 100,000 tons of green-dyed horseradish that dominate budget sushi chains. This extreme scarcity has driven the price of authentic wasabi in high-end restaurants to 50 to 100 times higher than the industrial substitute, making it one of the most expensive agricultural products in the culinary world. To understand why wasabi is considered one of the most difficult crops to grow in the world, so difficult that the BBC once called it a farmer's nightmare, we must begin our journey in Shizuoka Prefecture, Japan. This region is often regarded as the capital of wasabi. Yet paradoxically, despite its reputation, the annual production here remains extremely limited. The reason lies in the plant's demanding natural requirements, conditions that are almost impossible to replicate. If you usually think that most spices can grow with fertile soil, a little sunlight, and some irrigation, wasabi is different. This notoriously picky plant will only grow when its roots are constantly surrounded by flowing spring water. And on top of that comes the most critical requirement. The water must be nearly perfectly pure and stable throughout the year. For this reason, the optimal cultivation method is known as sawa wasabi, which involves growing the plants directly in carefully controlled natural streams. The water used here is not tap water or artificial irrigation. Instead, it comes from rain and melting snow in the surrounding mountains, slowly filtering through layers of volcanic rock for years before emerging as spring water. By the time it reaches the wasabi roots, the water has passed through a natural filtration system so effective that many modern water treatment plants would envy it. The result is crystal clear spring water containing almost no harmful microorganisms and only a very light mineral content, just enough to nourish the plant without damaging its delicate root system. Because the water travels underground, its temperature remains remarkably stable at around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius throughout the year. In some farms, the spring water is so pure that farmers can scoop it up and drink it directly. But for wasabi, clean water alone is not enough. The water must also flow continuously to supply dissolved oxygen to the roots. If the water becomes stagnant, oxygen levels drop rapidly and the roots can begin to rot within days. On the other hand, if the current is too strong, young plants can be uprooted. Growing wasabi, therefore, is essentially an art of controlling water flow, slow enough for the plants to anchor their roots, yet fast enough for the roots to breathe. In areas where the stream has a moderate slope and stable flow, farmers can plant wasabi directly along the banks, reinforcing the beds with natural stones. However, in steeper areas, or where the water flow fluctuates seasonally, they must construct stone terraces known as tatami ishi. These structures disperse the current and stabilize the water level around each cluster of plants. Thanks to this delicate balance of terrain, pristine water, and meticulous farming techniques, wasabi fields hidden beneath Japan's forest canopies have endured for centuries, quietly cultivating a small green condiment that is often considered the green gold of Japanese cuisine. After each harvest cycle, which lasts nearly 2 years, the gravel bed beneath a wasabi field no longer maintains its original structure. Fine sediment and minerals gradually accumulate in the tiny gaps between the stones, small spaces that play a crucial role in allowing oxygen to circulate around the roots. Once these gaps become clogged, water flow slows, dissolved oxygen levels drop, and the risk of root rot begins to increase. For that reason, the first step is always to completely drain the field. Farmers use specialized tilling machines to loosen the top layer of gravel to a depth of about 10 to 15 centimeters. The goal is not to plow the soil as in conventional farming, but rather to restore the porosity needed for water and oxygen to circulate naturally around the roots during the next growing cycle. Soon after, water is gradually reintroduced in a controlled manner. The water level is kept just high enough to lightly cover the field surface. When the gravel is disturbed, the remaining fine sediment rises and is carried away by the current. Farmers then use flushing pipes to remove the muddy residue section by section, ensuring that the accumulated debris is cleared without disturbing the layered structure beneath, an essential element that keeps the field's natural drainage system stable. As the water slowly becomes clear again, the final adjustments begin. The field surface is leveled using long grading boards, but the flatness required here is highly technical. The bed must maintain a microslope of roughly 1 to 3 millimeters per meter, just enough to keep the water flowing steadily without causing erosion or forming localized whirlpools. Once everything is complete, water is allowed to flow steadily through the field for several days as a final system check. Farmers carefully observe the water clarity, the direction of the current, and how the gravel surface responds. Only when all conditions reach a delicate balance, clear water, even flow, and no stagnant zones, is the field considered ready for another growing cycle that will last nearly 2 more years. From this point, the actual planting process truly begins. There is no rushing at this stage, because even the smallest mistake can affect the entire 18-24-month growing cycle that follows. Instead of placing the seedlings immediately, farmers first mark each planting spot by setting specialized plastic rings across the surface of the field. Each ring is spaced about 20 centimeters apart, roughly the width of an adult hand, forming a straight, evenly distributed grid across the entire bed. This spacing is close enough to maximize land use, yet wide enough to allow water to flow smoothly between plants without creating stagnant pockets or small whirlpools. Once the positions are set, the gravel inside each ring is carefully adjusted by hand to form a shallow depression about 3 to 5 centimeters deep. The seedling is then placed so that the root collar sits level with or slightly above the gravel surface, ensuring the roots remain fully exposed to the flowing water while avoiding burial in oxygen-poor conditions. Only when every planting hole is set at the correct depth, spaced properly, and surrounded by evenly distributed flowing water is the field finally considered fully planted and ready for the long growing cycle ahead. After nearly 2 years, the moment of harvest finally arrives, the time when patience is put to the ultimate test. What many people don't realize is that the part of wasabi we enjoy is not actually the root. It is the rhizome, a swollen stem that grows just above the root system. This is where the plant's signature pungent flavor is concentrated. The rhizome is crisp and extremely fragile, which is why harvesting cannot be mechanized and must be done entirely by hand. Farmers step directly into the cold stream water, carefully feeling for each plant and gently pulling it from the gravel bed without damaging the delicate rhizome. Even the smallest crack or scratch can break the thin outer skin, triggering oxidation enzymes that quickly turn the rhizome dark and rob it of its refined flavor. Once harvested, the first step is sorting and trimming, a process that requires almost obsessive precision. Using specialized knives, farmers remove the fine roots and aged outer skin, keeping only the central rhizome that meets strict standards for size and firmness. In fact, around 30% of the total harvest is typically discarded at this stage to ensure that only the highest quality rhizomes reach the market. This step is not merely cosmetic. Trimming helps keep the surface dry, preventing excess moisture from diluting the plant's characteristic heat, while also reducing the risk of mold during storage. Next, the prepared rhizomes enter the cleaning stage, a critical step for export. Instead of harsh brushing, farmers use high-pressure water jets designed specifically for this purpose. These streams are carefully calibrated to reach deep into the crevices of the rhizome, removing the fine layers of sediment accumulated during 2 years of growth, while preserving the delicate outer skin. If not cleaned thoroughly, remaining particles of mud can harbor bacteria that accelerate internal decay during transportation. From here, the wasabi is carefully packed into insulated foam containers. Each rhizome is placed neatly with enough space to prevent pressure or damage to its fragile structure. Under these carefully controlled conditions, the wasabi can maintain peak freshness for up to 72 hours, preserving the moist texture and vibrant flavor that has traveled all the way from the clear mountain streams of Izu to the diner's plate. But before we experience the authentic flavor of fresh wasabi, it's worth taking a brief detour into the world of industrial horseradish processing plants, the substitute that has dominated the market for decades and allowed the global food industry to cut ingredient costs by up to 90%. Unlike wasabi, an extremely demanding plant that requires pristine flowing water and tightly controlled growing conditions, horseradish thrives in dry soil, grows quickly, and adapts easily to different environments. Structurally, horseradish roots are opaque white, larger, rougher, and covered with numerous side roots, quite different from the smooth rhizome of Japanese wasabi. While a mature wasabi rhizome typically weighs 150 to 200 grams, a horseradish root can grow several times heavier in roughly half the time. So what exactly is the secret behind this so-called fake wasabi? The bright green condiment we often mistake for wasabi in mass-produced tubes usually begins with horseradish powder. This powder is then blended with starch, mustard, and green food coloring to recreate the familiar color and texture. The result is a thick, smooth paste with a sharp heat that shoots straight up the nose, a direct chemical reaction caused by the high concentration of allyl isothiocyanate found in horseradish and mustard. This pungency is noticeably different from the flavor of real wasabi, which is cleaner, slightly sweet, and more delicate, spreading gently across the palate before fading quickly. From an economic perspective, the difference is even more striking. Premium fresh wasabi can cost anywhere between $100 and $300 per kilogram, while industrial horseradish powder may cost restaurant owners less than $2 per kilogram of finished product. This enormous price gap explains why most casual dining establishments rely on the substitute rather than serving the rare and expensive agricultural product that is authentic wasabi. In 1958, Japan was forced to ban fugu preparation in many regions due to the high number of fatalities. Ironically, a single small pufferfish can kill up to 30 people with a toxin 1,200 times stronger than cyanide. Yet even that isn't enough to stop diners who are captivated by the unique flavor that only fugu can offer. Because of the immense risks involved in eating it, the preparation of pufferfish is carried out with near absolute precision. When the fish has been cleaned, the chef begins with a small incision behind the head to immobilize it, ensuring the rest of the process is smooth and exact. Next, the sharp fins are carefully removed for use in traditional dishes. The mouth is trimmed as well to eliminate toxins present in the salivary glands and to prevent any unexpected reaction during handling. Only after all these preparations are complete does the true dissection begin. Inside a pufferfish lie 4 areas with extremely high toxin concentrations: the liver, ovaries, intestines, and skin. Removing them requires precision akin to microsurgery. Every cut must be at the correct point, with the correct pressure, and performed in a strict sequence that allows no deviation. All internal organs are then sealed and disposed of as hazardous material, a testament to the profession's rigor. When the final fillet is prepared, the chef moves on to the most artistic stage, slicing sashimi. The translucent, paper-thin pieces are arranged into the shape of a chrysanthemum, a symbol of purity and a tribute to the chef's refined technique. Enjoying fugu is not merely about taste, but about appreciating the precision, focus, and tradition embodied in each slice. Beyond sashimi, pufferfish is prepared in many other bold ways. In Korea, the meat is stir-fried in a fiery red sauce. In Japan, fugu tempura becomes light and delicate, with a crisp coating that reveals the firm white flesh inside. Farewell to the dangerous pufferfish processing lines. We now step into a completely different world, one where one of the most expensive and extraordinary coffees on the planet is created from the droppings of a civet. Have you ever wondered why people still confidently drink civet coffee, even though it originates from the digestive tract of an animal? The reason lies in a production process far cleaner than most would imagine. Civets select only the ripest coffee cherries, what farmers call naturally hand-picked fruits, which make up less than 10% of an entire plantation. When swallowed, the coffee beans aren't mixed with waste. Instead, they are exposed only to digestive enzymes, creating a unique fermentation process that no modern technology can replicate. Each morning, workers collect the civet droppings and hand-separate the intact beans before transferring them into large water tanks for repeated washing. The beans are stirred thoroughly to remove the biological mucilage, dirt, and microorganisms, then disinfected and left to drain. Only the beans that pass this strict cleaning process are roasted in small roasting machines, kept consistently between 180 to 220 degrees Celsius for 15 to 20 minutes. This step demands absolute precision. Even minor changes in temperature or airflow can completely alter the signature aroma. Compared to regular coffee, civet beans have already undergone natural fermentation inside the civet's body, altering their protein and sugar structures. This allows the beans to roast evenly from the core outward, reducing harshness and producing a distinctive sweet aftertaste. When the beans reach the perfect crack point, they are rapidly cooled and moved into specialized grinders. Thanks to the softened structure created by enzymatic action, the beans grind more smoothly, producing fine, fluffy coffee powder that ensures maximum flavor extraction. It is this rarity, combined with such meticulous processing techniques, that drives the price of civet coffee to $800 to $2,500 USD per kilogram, earning its status as one of the most expensive coffees in the world. We now move on to the production line of natto, the fermented soybean dish known as Japan's legendary warrior of aroma, boasting a history of more than 1,000 years. The journey begins with tiny soybeans, yet the selection standards are surprisingly strict. Only about 15% of the harvested beans are round, uniform, and rich enough in protein to qualify. Their small size helps them absorb heat quickly and allows bacteria to penetrate more easily, creating natto's iconic, sticky texture. After selection, the beans enter an industrial washing system, where swirling water at pressures reaching 120 liters per minute and continuous air bubbles scrub away dirt and dried skin. Once thoroughly cleaned, The beans are soaked and transferred to a high-pressure steamer at around 120 degrees Celsius, softening the protein layers in preparation for fermentation. While the beans are still hot, workers perform the most crucial step, inoculating them with natto culture. The starter containing Bacillus subtilis var natto is sprayed through an ultra-fine nozzle, coating every bean in less than 3 seconds, ensuring the bacteria latch on immediately. The beans are then moved into a fermentation chamber, maintained at 40 degrees Celsius, the ideal temperature for bacterial activity. Here, the microbes quietly break down proteins and create polyglutamic acid, the substance that gives natto its ability to stretch into strands up to 1 meter long. After 18 to 20 hours, once the batch reaches peak fermentation, it is sent directly to the packaging line, where foam trays glide along the conveyor belt. A precision dispenser drops the perfect portion of warm, fluffy natto into each tray. Next, a packet of shoyu sauce is automatically added, completing the flavor profile. Within seconds, the trays are sealed tightly and ready to leave the production line. For natto lovers, this is a uniquely bold, savory, deeply traditional delicacy. But for first-timers, this fermented soybean dish can be a true aroma challenge that tests their courage at first encounter. Unlike the rest of the world, there is a dish for which clean isn't a standard. It is, in fact, the enemy. That dish is Sweden's infamous fermented herring, surströmming, whose smell is often described as a blend of rotting meat, dirty diapers, and blue cheese. Along the coastal factories of Northern Europe, the journey of surströmming begins the moment the herring is pulled from the water. On the deck, instead of sending the fish into a standard cleaning process like other seafood, the crew sprinkles them with a thin layer of coarse salt. The salt level is only about 6 to 8%, just enough to keep the fish slightly firm and prevent early spoilage, yet low enough to leave breathing room for lactic acid bacteria, the key players in the upcoming fermentation. Once the catch arrives at the processing plant, the herring is handled in a way that almost completely defies conventional food production. Instead of removing the internal organs, the workers make a small incision near the gills. A portion of the fish's natural enzymes is intentionally left inside, just enough to jumpstart fermentation when the herring is submerged in a mild brine. Here, massive fermentation tanks act as artificial stomachs, maintaining a steady temperature of 15 to 18 degrees Celsius for 6 to 8 weeks. Then comes the boldest step. The fish is canned while still alive in its microbial environment. No cooking, no sterilizing, just sealed steel cans, leaving the rest of the transformation to time. In the months that follow, the cans begin to bulge as gases build up inside, turning each one into a mini fermentation chamber that completes the dish's notorious flavor. Lying between Alaska and Russia, the Bering is a harsh natural boundary connecting the Pacific Ocean with the Arctic Ocean. This is a deep, cold body of water constantly struck by strong winds, drifting ice, and fierce winter storms, making it one of the most challenging fishing grounds in the world. Yet this very harshness nurtures a nutrient-rich ecosystem, where diversity and dense biological productivity turn the Bering into a rare natural reserve of seafood, allowing migratory species, especially Alaska pollock, to reach immense stock levels. Although there are hundreds of fish species offshore, fish sticks in fact revolve around only a few main names, of which Alaska pollock accounts for up to 90%. The rest are hake, cod, and haddock. All of them are white meat fish, low in bones, easy to fillet, and cheap enough to meet an annual output of millions of tons. Every January, the Bering Sea boils with modern factory trawlers more than 113 meters long, with capacities of up to 6,000 horsepower, where seasoned fishermen are ready to conquer migratory fish schools, numbering in the billions. Modern fishing has become a game of technology, completely beyond the realm of luck. Natural signs such as flocks of seagulls swooping down to the water, once the familiar code fishermen used to guess the location of fish schools, are no longer the only tools for tracking the traces of massive migratory fish. Replacing them are deep-scan sonar systems, surface radars, and high-frequency echo sounders, creating a living map of the underwater world in real time. On deck, specialists constantly monitor wave-scan displays and ultrasonic detectors, devices sensitive enough to accurately outline every movement of entire fish schools hidden deep below the seafloor. When the image appears, with dark bands sweeping across the screen like a living cloud of the ocean, the captain immediately orders the nets to be released. Midwater trawl nets, the ultimate weapon of the modern industrial fishing industry, are deployed with near-perfect precision. With a mouth diameter hundreds of meters wide and a height equivalent to a 10-story building, the net is released, opening like a giant steel funnel in the ocean. When the net closes, the entire fish school is gathered in an instant. The bottom of the net is tightened by a cable system, sealed as if tying the mouth of a bag, then slowly hauled to the surface. The back-breaking work of net hauling in the past has now been replaced by automatic hydraulic winches that pull up hundreds of tons of fish with just a single control button, not only saving labor, but also increasing productivity and output by hundreds of times. Within minutes, hundreds of tons of pollock thunder down onto the deck, powerful like the discharge of a dam. On the processing floor, the intake funnels open wide to catch the dense stream of fish flowing straight into the ship's hold, where a floating factory is already waiting to begin a mass processing sequence for the newly captured haul. Inside modern factory trawlers stretching over 100 meters, nearly 3/4 of the space is dedicated to processing and freezing, turning them into true floating factories capable of handling up to 300 tons of fish per trip. The moment the catch hits the deck, a race against time begins. Pollock must be processed within minutes to preserve optimal freshness. From the intake chute, the fish move on to the conveyor system, where a stream of water continuously washes away blood, debris, and surface mucus before they are routed into automatic grading channels based on size, weight, and body shape. At each sorting gate, fish drivers stand by, guiding the flow into the correct processing lanes to prevent blockages and maintain uninterrupted throughput. After grading, the fish are sent to the automatic gutting machine, where a high-speed rotating blade slices along the body, removing the viscera in just a few seconds per fish. Next, the head-body bone separation system operates continuously, processing more than 100 fish per minute. This workflow ensures that the resulting fillets are almost completely free of fine bones, an essential requirement for fish stick production. The fillets then move on to the candling stage. Each piece is examined under intense light from an illuminated table to reveal any remaining bones, blood spots, or tissue defects. Skilled workers at the candling stations quickly remove these small imperfections, a seemingly minor step, yet one that ultimately determines the final quality of the fish block. The qualified fillets are then packed into rectangular fish blocks, weighing approximately 7 to 9 kilograms, with uniform flesh density and precise thickness. This is the standardized raw format that allows hundreds of perfectly identical fish sticks to be cut later on. The blocks are fed into a plate freezer, a dual-surface freezing system using high-pressure steel plates. The core temperature drops within just 2 hours, forming ultrafine ice crystals that preserve muscle structure and minimize moisture loss during thawing. This is a decisive advantage for quality when the blocks are brought ashore for further processing. The vessel's cold hold stores hundreds of tons of fish blocks throughout the voyage, ensuring no thermal loss even as the ship operates continuously for weeks. The long journey at sea for these frozen fillet blocks officially ends when they are brought ashore and sent directly to the fish stick processing plant, the final and most demanding stage in the production of this convenient food. At the plant, each received fish block undergoes a strict incoming quality check. Specialists measure the block's dimensions and weight, verify core temperature, flesh uniformity, color, and moisture loss. A sample block is partially thawed to assess texture, odor, and any remaining pin bones, ensuring the material meets all standards before entering production. After passing the inspection, the fish blocks are moved to the slicing area, the first step, and the one that defines the overall structure in the production of fish sticks. On the slicing line, the frozen fillet blocks are fed through a high-speed bandsaw, dividing them into fillet sheets of uniform thickness before the automatic cutting system takes over and slices them into hundreds of sticks with millimeter-level precision, 10 to 12 millimeters thick, 20 to 25 millimeters wide, and 60 to 90 millimeters long. This exacting precision is essential for achieving perfect consistency in the subsequent coating, frying, and freezing stages. Once shaped, the fish sticks move into the coating line, where their crust is built through 3 consecutive layers that define the final crisp texture. First, each freshly cut stick is completely covered with a thin layer of batter, ensuring even adhesion from end to end. Next, the sticks pass through a dry coating layer, which stabilizes the surface and creates a firm base for the final stage. A generous coating of golden breadcrumbs that will produce the signature light, crunchy bite after frying. Throughout the process, sensor-controlled spraying and rolling systems closely monitor and maintain the optimal coating thickness, ensuring that every finished fish stick expands evenly, fries to a uniform crispness, and achieves consistent quality across the entire batch. After coating, the fish sticks are quickly fried for no more than 30 seconds. This par-frying technique sets the outer crust while keeping the interior frozen. The goal is not to cook the product, but to lock in its shape, ensuring each stick remains intact during freezing and transport. When a fish stick snaps with a crisp break, while the interior remains firm and white, the par-fry level is considered perfect. Immediately after the par-fry stage, the fish sticks enter the IQF system, individual quick freezing. Powerful blasts of ultra-cold air freeze each stick solid within just a few minutes. During the process, the sticks remain separated, preventing any clumping. IQF technology ensures not only free-flowing products but also preserves the muscle structure, moisture content, and overall quality throughout storage and transport. Once the freezing stage is complete, each fish stick moves into the automated packaging area, the final step before leaving the production line. Here, the sticks are checked for weight using high-precision laser sensors, then transferred directly into a fully robotized packing system. Robotic arms handle the arranging, positioning, and sealing of bags or cartons at a steady pace, allowing the line to reach a capacity of 4,000 to 6,000 boxes per hour, depending on the plant configuration. After packaging, the entire batch is moved into the cold storage area, where it waits for distribution across the globe while maintaining its original quality. From the vast pollock schools of the Bering Sea to the deep freeze precision of processing lines, each stick represents a blend of natural nutrition and carefully controlled technology. But like all industrial foods, it carries its limits. The added batter, oil, and sodium call for mindful selection and moderate consumption. When used wisely, the fish stick becomes more than a quick meal. It becomes a balanced part of contemporary eating, where flavor, nourishment, and responsibility toward our own bodies are meant to coexist.